Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead Daryl Dixon video, and today I'll be talking about Season 2 and doing some predictions and theories of what I believe will happen in Season 2, where the story will go, what the big moments are, and how Season 2 will end, because we do know a lot about this season. There's been some leaks, we've known a lot of information, and we know Season 2 is called The Book of Carol, so we know this is going to be a very Carol-centric story. And I call it episode 1 will be about Carol mostly, and about her trying to trace down Daryl's steps in America and how he got to France. I think that there's also a new character being introduced, and we already know how Carol's going to get there. Daryl got by boat. Carol's actually going to meet this guy who has a plane, and she's going to fly over the Atlantic to France, so she's not going to have that issue of meeting Madame Genet's people in the docks in the north of France. So that's very interesting that Daryl takes a boat, but we know Carol is going to take a plane, which means that they have an easy way to get back. It's not going to be Carol ends up in France and now she's also stranded there. No, she's going to end up in France with a way back, and definitely a way to bring Daryl back very easily. And that's definitely going to be Carol's story in these 6 episodes. And her whole focus will be about, Daryl, I need you to come home. Well, Daryl has this inner struggle of, do I go back with Carol or do I stay with my new family, Isabelle and Laurent? And because of this struggle that Daryl has, there's definitely going to be a conflict of interest between Isabelle and Carol. And those characters are definitely not going to get along. Carol wants Daryl to come back with her, but then Isabelle wants Daryl to stay, and Carol's a selfish person, so Carol will definitely not be above trying to manipulate Isabelle. However, Isabelle is a lot like Carol in some ways, and she'll be able to hold her own against Carol. There'll probably be some mutual respect by the end of the season, but that'll definitely be an early conflict. Or if not, it just makes a lot of sense for an early conflict to be about these two characters which are pulling Daryl to one fate or the other. They're not going to get along. And you can have Laurent just stuck in the middle of all this, and definitely Season 2 will be about demystifying him further. Season 1 set out to be this potential messiah. By the end of the season, they break it down to be like, okay, maybe he's not. And they put more doubt upon it. But I think in Season 2, they will just try to clarify 100%, no he isn't. And I think the messiah aspect of Laurent will be gone by the end of the season, and there will be no more people looking to Laurent as the future leader of France. I think by the end of the season, Laurent will have his fate gone, and will just be just another kid. And that will go into the factor that will help Daryl finally make his decision on does he stay or leave. Or maybe that will be taken out of his hands because you have Madame Genet to contend with. And Season 1 was definitely about setting her up and you had Caudron as the main villain. But Season 2 is Madame Genet's season. Caudron will definitely still be in the show, but he will be a much smaller character, and Season 2 will be his redemption arc, even though he hasn't really done anything villainous in Season 1, other than losing every fight to Daryl. Season 2 will be about Caudron trying to redeem himself, maybe, because we've had the chance of Caudron to be the villain. They've kind of ruined it, and now they put him up against Madame Genet. He's now going to be that third factor that will reluctantly team up with Daryl and his group to defend against Madame Genet and her army of the dead. And Season 2 is going to be about perfecting that Walker virus. And Madame Genet, by the end of the season, is going to be a massive threat. This is going to be a bigger build-up to a massive Season 3, I feel. As you will have, by the end of the season, Madame Genet would have perfected the Walker virus, and she will have an army, or a perfect serum, to make the army of the super aggressive variant super walkers. And this could be the factor why Daryl chooses to leave France. We know Season 3 actually doesn't take place in France, and Season 2 will be the last season in France. And you could have it be something like, okay, Daryl beats Madame Genet, or everyone at the nest dies, and Daryl's like, well, I'm going back with you, Carol. No. I believe Season 2 is building up this maybe world event or something like that, where Madame Genet perfects it and she leaves France to maybe try and get back at Daryl. Maybe she takes the serum and goes on a boat and heads back across the Atlantic, and maybe Season 3 is about Daryl having to travel to America again to stop Madame Genet from using the serum to make super walkers on Alexandria or the Commonwealth. So Daryl was having to defend his old home from this new threat. And I don't think that's the best way to keep some of these characters involved in season 3, because we know season 3 doesn't take place in France. If you're going to end up in season 2 destroying the variants, ending Madame Genet, and Daryl's like, well, bye everyone in France, I'm going back to America or somewhere else, I feel like it will make season 2 and 3 feel very disconnected, and it could end up being a bit like Fear season 3 and 4, where they feel like completely different shows. And if Daryl just makes this choice to leave with Carol at the end of the season and they deal with everything and everything's good, it just undercuts the ending of season 1. So it makes more sense for Madame Genet to be the through line and the reason why they have to change locations, and she's the villain for all the seasons of The Walking Dead, and that helps keeps the variants in the story. Even though they're no longer going to be in France, variants will still be a thing, and maybe Madame Genet brings variants to America. So in newer Walking Dead shows, we'll see a variant here and there, because Madame Genet and Daryl brought the variants to America, and that will definitely have some sort of impact on the Walking Dead universe and be very interesting. And with this idea that Daryl has to leave with Carol to go stop Madame Genet, does keep the story open for Daryl to be like, now I want to go back to France to be with my new family. Or if Daryl's not just abandoning his new family, which was the whole issue in season 1, he could bring them along. Maybe Isabelle's like, I have to come with you, we have to stop Madame Genet together, and Laurent smuggles on board of the plane. That could be something that happens, and that's entirely possible. I believe if Daryl's never going to go back to France, at the end of season 2, Isabelle and Laurent will be on the plane with them. If he is intending to go back to France in the final season, then you have them stay behind, and you just have Carol, Daryl, and this new character go on the plane back to the United States to have the big season with the Walkers, Madame Genet versus Daryl, in America. Personally, for me, I'm leaning way towards Laurent and Isabelle joining Daryl for season 3 in America. The way I see the season ending is with Madame Genet forced to escape with the serum, and her party or faction crumbling, but also the nest being destroyed, and the Messiah story for Laurent ending at the end of season 2, so that he could travel with Daryl to America with no consequences. I believe by the end of season 2, no one is still going to be around because Madame Genet would have killed them, or they would have sacrificed themselves for Laurent, and that would play into season 3 with Laurent having this guilt of all these people dying for him when he realizes that he's not special at all. He was just born in a chapel, born in a cathedral. Or they could have Madame Genet steal Laurent by the end of the season, and while she's escaping, she takes Laurent with her to America, because you could have the issue with Laurent's actor being a child. You can't really have him pick up his family and move to another country. So they could have the thing where Laurent is taken off screen, and in season 3 you don't see Laurent, but you know he's in America somewhere, and it's about them dealing with Genet and trying to find Laurent, who's captured and taken to America. And that could get around it while they're trying to sort out something with Laurent for the actor to age up a little, or something like that. And that would really work for why Isabelle joins Daryl to head to America, and why Daryl has to leave France. So instead of the nest being destroyed, Laurent is abducted by the end of the season, and Madame Genet flees France. And then all the characters don't have to die at the end of the season, and they could just be left in France for a potential reunion in the final season. And it does really work if Daryl is forced to leave France to go and save his new family, and then chooses to go back to France with them, and it doesn't undercut anything in season 1, and it builds on it in a way. And that is it for me today, and these are all my theories and predictions for what could happen in season 2 and aspects of season 3. So please tell me down below, what do you think? Do you agree with me that Madame Genet could be the reason why Daryl leaves and he doesn't ding dong dip and be like, bye new family, I'm going to go back to America with Carol? Or do you have a different opinion about how season 2 will end? I'd like to know all your opinions about The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol, down below. But this is it for me today, so goodbye, peace out. I'll see you in my next video.